السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ولقد همت به وهم بها لولا أن رأى برهان ربه كذلك لنصرف عنه السوء والفحشاء إنه من عبادنا المخلصين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, everybody. Today I apologize for a little extra lateness. Sheikh Suhaib and I had some things to discuss even until last minute, and I thank him for being up in the middle of the night talking to me about this ayah and some things that I still needed to address with him. This is ayah number 24 now, and it is one of the difficult ayat of the Quran to understand at face value, and it's very easy to cross a line when it comes to the dignity and honor we have for prophets when we don't exhibit caution in interpreting some parts of the Quran in line with what Allah has taught us Himself. The first thing I'd like to say is, classically speaking, people assume that we have only the most noble interpretations of the Quran. But some pretty terrible things have been said about Yusuf alayhi salam in classical tafsir also, and maybe one day we will address some of that our scholarship, some of it is remarkable and some of it said some, pretty crazy things, and then other scholars came and refuted the crazy things that were said. And this is one of those places where some pretty crazy things were said about Yusuf alayhi salam. But what we're going to do is we're going to avoid all of them. We're going to, instead of me framing our discussion about this ayah, about the wrong things that are said, and then correcting that, my approach to, what I don't believe to be correct ideas or misinterpretations or less than convincing interpretations is that you should be presenting what you think is the most compelling way of looking at something. You should provide your evidence and your rationale for why you're explaining things in this way, and then let that idea speak for itself. And what is wrong can get refuted without you ever having to refute it actually. And I personally, just as an approach in Islamic studies generally, that's been my approach. And in the study of the Quran also, because if you start saying, well, let me look at all the wrong ways this has been interpreted and then refute all the wrongs before I talk about the right, then you've focused the attention on the wrong. That's the first problem with that. The second problem is you've actually taken attention away from the ayah, because you're also saying that's not what the ayah says, that's not what the ayah says, that's not what the ayah says. So now you're discussing what people have said and you've kind of lost track of what Allah says. So that takes away from it too. The third is, when you go after somebody and say you're wrong and you're wrong and you're wrong, then that creates obviously room for argument. And so what is supposed to be a meaningful learning of the Quran, now it becomes a back and forth about who's right and who's wrong, all of which I find extremely unproductive. There's an academic setting for those sorts of things where you can go back and forth and have opposing points of view and all of that. That's fine. But really, as sincere students of the Quran, all of you, inshallah, some of you are just getting exposed to some things from the Quran. You're not really, you don't consider yourself Quran study students in that way. But when you get to the point where you say, you know what, I want to study this book, I want to spend some time learning what this book has to say, the fact is you are going to come across different people saying different things about what you're learning, right? That's just what's going to happen. And when that happens, my advice to you as a fellow student, I don't say teacher, as a fellow student, maybe I have a few years more than you do in the study, and maybe some of you watching have many more years in your studies than I do, but I won't call myself a scholar by any stretch of the imagination. And even if I'm calling myself a teacher, more a teacher of Arabic and much more an avid student of the Quran, as a student, my advice to you would be, try to understand to the best of your ability sincerely what Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, and try to ask genuine questions with humility to Allah first. Humility to Allah. And that is exhibited in the way that we pose our questions. And then when you come to a conclusion that you think this is what Allah may mean, then you are convinced of that opinion, but also at the same time, you are open to being challenged for what you arrived at, because what you and I arrive at is, at the end of the day, a personal exercise of best judgment. This is to the best of my ability what I can understand. And maybe if somebody comes along and says, hey, what about this evidence, or what about this way of looking at it, and I never considered it, or somebody else brings forth new evidence, our loyalty shouldn't be to our conclusions. Our loyalty should not be to our comfort zones. Our loyalty should be to Allah's word. وَكَلِمَةُ اللَّهِ هِيَ الْعُلْيَا. And our loyalty should be to the truth. So when compelling evidence, proper reasoning, and I'm not just saying just any kind of reasoning, because people come up with all kinds of ridiculous reasoning that doesn't add up. But if you have proper academic reasoning to go with a certain position, then be sincere in that, even if somebody else doesn't like it. Anyhow, that's just on the side note. Let's get into the ayah itself. The last thing, just as a recap of what we talked about in the previous ayah, she's made an attempt at him, and she's basically she hasn't taken an action yet. She's basically just said hayta lak. One thing I didn't tell you about hayta lak is one opinion is that it's actually in the language of Hebrew, which is the original language of Yusuf alayhi salam. So she's an Egyptian elite using the language of the servant or the slave, and that's maybe also because she thinks of him as an exotic thing, because Hebrew slaves or slaves of that region were not a common thing, right? Because he's actually not from the batch of slaves from, they're not slaves from that area. He's actually a child that was kidnapped, right? So he is different from the other slaves, even language-wise, and ethnically and physically. Probably he looks different than all of them too. So that's one possible interpretation. But that's all she said. And Yusuf alayhi salam has responded, and we talked about the value of his response and the power of his response. Ma'adallahi innahu rabbi ahsana mathwaya innahu la yuflihu dhalimun. Now, before the story continues in ayah number 25, Allah interjects himself. Now Allah has a comment before the story continues. And you notice Allah does that in the story, right? So before we saw that Allah brought him to the house, and the husband said to the wife, honor his residence, and Allah paused the story and made a comment and said, when he became of old age, we gave him wisdom, we gave him knowledge, this is how we reward those who excel. Then you can move on with the story, right? Or sometimes Allah will say, كَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا يُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. That's how we settled Yusuf in the land. Now Allah is commenting without moving the story forward. He's putting his some things we need to think about before we think about what happened next, right? So storytelling in the Quran isn't just about this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Well, before you think about what happened next, I want you to think about this. And the remarkable thing about Allah's storytelling and Allah depicting history is that He has, I don't know how else to describe it to you guys, He has angles, He has camera angles, He has microphones where we can't have them. Right? So he has a microphone inside somebody's heart. He can tell us what they were feeling, what they were thinking. He can see things that nobody else saw. He can be witness to things nobody else in history was ever witness to. You could be Ibrahim alayhi salam in the middle of the desert thousands of years ago, nobody's around, and you just turned to the sky and you made a dua to Allah, and Allah recorded it in the Quran. What microphone was there? What camera was there? Right? But Allah recorded that, and He brought it out from history. No historian can do that, right? So yeah, there are the events and dates and locations, but then there's a history here of not what was happening in terms of the actions and the words, because anybody can capture those too, but what was happening inside people. There's a history of what was happening inside hearts, what was going on inside of minds. And that's the kind of history that we appreciate about Allah, that He is basir. إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِعِبَادِهِ خَبِيرًا بَصِيرًا. That Allah has always been, when it comes to His servants and His slaves, He's always been someone who has full news, and He has full view. And full view doesn't just mean He knows that I'm sitting here right now, but He knows the ongoings of my heart. He knows the thoughts that I carry. He knows the fears and anxieties that I have. Sometimes you're in a conversation, I'm having a conversation with my wife, she says something, I pause for a second, she doesn't know what I'm thinking, but Allah already does. Allah already does. And He may even remind me on Judgment Day, this is what you were thinking before you said this. This is what was going on inside of you. إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. So this coming ayah is like that. This ayah is a commentary on what was going on inside her heart. What was she feeling? And what was going on in his heart? Or what could have been going on in his heart? That's what this is about. And this is the first thing to note here is that Allah Azza wa Jal is watching what's happening inside of our hearts. I'm reminded of an ayah in the Quran, فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ. So his heart is sinful. Allah says in a place, his heart is sinful. Wow, not his hands are sinful, not his eyes are sinful, his tongue is sinful. Allah now is saying the heart is sinful. Wow. فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ. So here, I want you to understand what's going on with her. Allah begins, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. And she had extreme desire for him. Hamma in Arabic is to actually want something really bad. Hamma also means to have a firm decision made, I'm going to get it no matter what. I'm bent on getting it. Okay? And muhim in modern Arabic, ahamma yuhimmu ihmaman, and muhim is something important. Muhimma is used for a mission. The word is used for a mission. Al-ihtimam is to give importance to something, or to go out of your way to take care of something. And the verb hamma actually means to have every intention to go after someone, to desire something, to want something, to intend something. And if you translated this here, walaqad actually means, and truly, for sure it is a fact that she absolutely desired him. Or she wanted him. She had every intention for him. And the most gentle translation of this would be, she absolutely desired him, there's no doubt about it. And so now the feeling she had inside of herself for him, Allah is exposing. Hammat bihi. But then Allah turns the other way. And there are two ways of, a bad translation would be, wahamma biha, and he desired her. So she absolutely desired him and he desired her. Now, this he desired her part, the thing is, let me put this to you in English. If you say they desired each other, if you say it like that, they desired each other, then the verb desired was used once. Yes? But two people's feelings were described. When you say they desired each other, then two people's feelings are described, but the word is only used once. But look at the Quran. She absolutely desired him, and he desired her. If we translate it that way. How many times did you hear me use the word desired? Twice. Once for her and once for him. Now this, without getting technical, is a classical Arabic mechanism by which you could have said it once and covered both. Like I just said, you could say they desired each other. Okay? وَهَمَّ أَحَدُهُمَا الْآخَرِ or bil-akhar. You could do that. وَهَمَّ أَحَدُهُمَا بِالْآخَرِ. You could do that. But instead of doing that, when you use the same verb twice, then actually it can mean that the way she desired him is something else, and the way he desired her is something else. You can't put both of them as the same. If they were the same, one word would have been enough to express what she feels and he feels, because their feelings are mutual, they're the same feeling. But the feelings are in their nature different from each other, and so they have been separated. That's the first difference. We still haven't arrived at a translation yet, or proper meaning yet, but I'm building the blocks. The first of them is the way that her desire is being described, linguistically speaking, is already being separated from whatever desire he may have felt. There's a separation, and we'll explore that separation in a little bit. The second is, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. She absolutely, for certain, Allah swears by, desired him. There's an emphasis that's placed on her desire. But on his desire, it's not وَلَقَدْ هَمَّ بِهَا. No, it's just وَهَمَّ بِهَا, and he desired her too. So there's actually a huge amount of stress placed on her feelings, and not much stress placed on his feelings at all. Now, and by the way, there's another way to look at hamma biha. Given the Arabic, there's two grammatically possible ways, and some people feel that one of them is correct or the other is correct. Classically, both of them were looked at. If you study classical tafasir, both of them are very equally plausible interpretations. But to make it simple in English, here's what it means. One way of looking at it, and we're going to look at both and explore both, okay? One way of looking at it is, she absolutely desired him, and he desired her in his own way, in some way that we'll figure out. The other meaning is, and she absolutely desired him, and he would have desired her too. Not she desired him, but he desired her, but he would have desired her too. So his is not he did, but he would have. Yeah? Okay, but now we'll look at the harder one first. The second one, he would have desired her too, is what I'm personally inclined towards. But the first one also has benefit. And you may not expect that benefit because it sounds almost inappropriate to say this about a Prophet ﷺ. But let's figure out how classically, like Imam Razi for example, addressed this very beautifully. And I gave you this analogy yesterday. I thought this was actually, because the first time I read it was in Ma'arif al-Quran by Mufti Muhammad Shafi rahimahullah's tafsir in Urdu. But actually he took it from Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi. Sheikh Suhaib mentioned it's actually mentioned in the Razi too. So what is this analogy he gives? He says a believer is not held sinful for feeling thirst while fasting. A believer is not held sinful for even, feeling hunger while fasting. He can feel it because he's human, but he's not sinful because he didn't act on it. So his desire could be the fact that he's a man, the fact that he's a young man, the fact that he is not married, the fact that there's a beautiful woman in front of him, but physiologically, biologically, you can feel attraction towards another female. A male can feel attraction for a female, and female can feel attraction towards a male. The feeling of attraction, the feeling of desire does not make you a sinner. That's something Allah put in you. That's not something you have control over. If you look at someone and you found them attractive, you can look away. What you do after that, you can be held accountable for. But the fact that you found them attractive is not a sin. You understand? Like the fact that you found them desirable is not something that's held against you. So the hamma biha could simply just mean he was attracted to her too, but he stopped himself. He found her attractive too, and that's not something he can be held sinful for. You can't say he is so righteous that he didn't even find her attractive. Maybe Allah is in fact validating that she was very beautiful by those words, that he did in fact find her attractive. And that makes his following course of action even more remarkable. Now, before we go further, I tried to tell you that her desire and his desire are different. So how are they different now? She felt a desire, she let that desire linger in her mind, she let that desire turn into some kind of a fantasy, she let that desire turning into something so crazy that she's locking the doors and doing all the crazy stuff that she did. All of that, yes. On the flip side, maybe even when Yusuf a.s. came of age and became a man and noticed that she's beautiful, he's guarding his eyes every single time, not even entertaining the thought. Because he knows there's something there, that he's a human being. Allah did not create him an angel. He created him a human being. He has physical desires and he's going to guard himself in every possible way. And he's been acting accordingly because he knows his humanness. And this is actually a very powerful lesson. Even if a prophet can feel attraction and therefore take proper measures and precautions, then you and I can't say, what are you trying to say? That's just a sister in Islam. I'm just talking to a sister in Islam. You questioning my intentions, bro? No, but if Yusuf a.s. is going to take extra caution, then I don't think we're immune. If there are interactions in which, we do this sister business, brother business, let's get that out of the way for a second. All of us are children of Adam a.s., so technically all human beings are brothers and sisters to each other. But, just because somebody's wearing a hijab or some guy has a beard and you call him brother Rafiq and sister Fatima or sister this or brother that, they're not your brother, they're not your sister. If you can marry them, and if it's halal to marry them, and if you can feel attracted towards them, then cut out the brother and sister thing. You can respect somebody, and you can think of them as, فَإِخْوَانُكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ, they're your brothers in faith. But that just means that you have a common faith between them. But when you call someone brother, you assume that there is no possibility of any wrongdoing. This is a trick of shaitan, using a good word to justify behavior that will lead to evil. So the sister-brother business is pretty fake sometimes. And it's no good. It's no good. And we're on top of all of it, everything else, we're actually dishonoring the terms. Because if they are your brother in faith and your sister in faith, then you and I should be doing everything to guard each other's faith, not put ourselves in compromising positions in each other's faith. So anyway, that's one way of looking at it, that he may have found her attractive, and then he still guarded himself. The other is, he didn't even desire her at all. He would have. If he even allowed that thought. So the question isn't about actions, because we know he didn't take any action that's wrong. The difference of opinion here is, did he even entertain the thought? Or did he not entertain the thought? So one idea is, even if the thought occurred to him for a glimpse that she's beautiful beforehand, that he prevented himself from ever entertaining it further. The other is, he would have entertained this thought. He would have had desire the same way she has desire for him too. And then you appreciate the next part, the would have. لَوْلَا أَرَّآ بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ, had it not been for the glaring evidence of his master that he saw. Had it not been for the glaring evidence of his master that he saw. In other words, he would have had desire for her if she put him in this compromised position, but something stopped him. And according to Allah, what stopped him, he would have become this way had he been missing something. had he been missing some kind of protection. As if to say, he would have fallen under this attack had he not had the proper shield. And what's that shield that Allah is describing that our beloved Yusuf ﷺ had? He saw the burhan, which I call the glaring evidence of his master. Barhana in Arabic is something clear, beautiful. Something clear and beautiful. It's something that's attractive also. It's an interesting word. And burhan is used for evidence that is clear, the sense of which is obvious and self-evident. The thing is, he's in a situation where your feelings can become pretty confusing. And in the middle of those feelings, he's able to see. Now Allah describes it as clear, and the beauty of his faith, the beauty of his loyalty to his master, the clearest evidence that this can never be right, no matter how much she may make it seem like it is. It's like he could see through the smoke and he could see the light clearly. He could see it. Some people have had different kinds of opinions on, and they've been mentioned classically, about some say that he saw the face of his father biting his nails. Some say that there's a partial story mentioned that she used to have an idol that they worshipped back then. She had an idol in the room, and before she tried to do anything, she covered the idol. And he said to himself, if she's ashamed to do this in front of an idol, how can I not be ashamed of Allah Azza wa Jal? Right? But none of those are established evidences. None of those are substantiated, to the point where we can say absolutely this is what happened. Which is why generally Mufassirun tend to agree the evidence of his master that he saw is what he knew in his heart. But this is where this ayah becomes so powerful. You see, when you know something, let me put this to you in ways that inshallah you'll remember. When you know something, it's in your brain. 2 + 2 is 4. I know it. I know my car is parked outside. I know my address. I know my phone number. Yeah, I know certain things. Knowledge is something that's sitting in a shelf in your head somewhere. But when you see something, not when you know something, when you see something, it's not in the shelf somewhere in the back, it's right in front of you. Sometimes you know something, but because it's not in front of you, you don't see it. Yes? Allah didn't just say he would have stopped had he not known. He said he would have desired her too had he not seen. Had he not seen. Now seeing is an act like, it's a new act. It's something that I see this book now. I didn't see it a minute ago. I wasn't here. I didn't see it. Right? The idea being that the reminder of Allah that lives inside of our hearts, the thought about Allah and the role Allah plays in my life and yours, we can know that, but sometimes we have to put that between, our eyes see something, and between what we see, we have to put our remembrance of Allah, like a curtain between ourselves and the haram that lies in front of us. And we have to see that first. We have to see it through that filter. He sees something attractive and beautiful, but what he can see because of the evidence of his master is running away from it is the most attractive thing. It is actually evil. Sometimes seeing things through the lens of faith, through the evidence of your master, seeing things that way will make you look at things for the opposite of what everybody else sees. They see the same thing, you see the opposite. I'll give you an example from the Quran. In Surah Ali Imran, describes the battle of Uhud. And part of the surah describes the battle of Uhud. In the battle of Uhud, we're outnumbered. We're terribly outnumbered. And we're going to run towards the enemy that's clearly going to kill us. Yeah? How does Allah describe it? سَابِقُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ. Run towards forgiveness from your master. Run towards heaven. Wait, what? There's a guy coming at me with a sword and a spear, thirsty for my blood. And Allah says, yeah, run towards him. You're not running towards the enemy, you're running towards my forgiveness. Everybody else sees death. The believer sees life. The believer sees something else. We see what others can't see because we have burhan of our Rabb. And that's what Allah is teaching us here through the experience of Yusuf alayhi salam, is we have to learn to see things differently. Even though our feelings and our biological makeup will want us to see things a certain way. This is desirable. This is what you want. This is so beautiful. You should just go for it. But you can see that. But your heart is telling you, your faith is telling you, no, what you see as beautiful is actually, ulaika, like Allah describes in one place, when He describes that men should not marry mushrik women, right? And He says sometimes you love her so much and you're so impressed by her, but the fact that she's calling to the fire, that she wants you to change your religion even. He says, ulaika yad'una ila an-nar. They're inviting you to the fire. And mushrik women should not marry, Muslim women should not marry mushrik men. When He talked about that, He said, you're so in love with them and how they make you feel and all of that, and you're overlooking something. They're inviting you to fire. And Allah is inviting you to Jannah and forgiveness. وَاللَّهُ يَدْعُو إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ وَالْمَغْفِرَةِ بِإِذْنِهِ. The point that I'm making to help you understand this ayah is that Yusuf alayhi salam was able to see something that no camera can capture. No eye can see, but the eye of faith can see. This helps us understand other places in the Quran where Allah says things like لَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا. They have eyes but they don't see with them. They have hearts but they don't think with them. لَهُمْ أَذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا لَهُمْ أَعْيُنٌ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ بِهَا لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. Why does He say that? They have eyes they don't see with them. Listen, even a disbeliever has eyes and they see with them. Somebody could say, I'm an atheist, but I got 20/20 vision. What you mean I got eyes I don't see with them? You don't see the burhan of your Rabb. You see, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. They know the obvious of worldly life. ذَلِكَ مَبْلَغُهُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ. That's as far as their knowledge goes. That's as far as they can see. They cannot see the unseen value that Allah puts on things. The unseen value. So a believer is we've got a two-dimensional view on reality. We see something for what it is materially, physically, socially, financially. We see it for what it is. And then we also have a label on it for what its value is as far as Allah wants us to see it. Right? And this is easy for you guys. Now in the month of Ramadan, you could see halal food in front of you, but it's haram until Maghrib. It's the same food, but you're seeing it differently. You're seeing it as something that you cannot have. You put a restriction on it that nobody without your faith will understand. People that don't have your faith, why aren't you eating the apple? I'm so hungry right now. Why don't you just drink it? No, I see burhan of my Rabb stopping me. Ara burhana Rabbi. I see the burhan of my Rabb. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Allah says He would have desired her too. Had He not seen what? The burhan of His master. The glaring evidence of His master. You have to bring that out and actually see it. You have to see it. Just because we know it, just because you've watched 100 videos, 1,000 videos, just because you've listened and you've memorized the Quran, or you studied, or you know Arabic, or you're the guy with the mic on, or you're the one listening. It doesn't matter. We're all human beings, and we can know a lot or know a little. When the time comes, will we actually see what we're supposed to or not? That's really what it's going to boil down to. When it's crunch time, when it's actually the time to be tested. This is the time where you need to see. It's easy to see when you're in the masjid. It's easy to see when you're sitting at home. It's nighttime. You already had your iftar, and now you're sitting there listening to something about the Quran. Right now, it's easy to see the burhan of your Rabb. But what's going to happen when you're going to go back to campus? What's going to happen when you're back at work, and she's there or he's there? What's going to happen then? Are you going to see the burhan of your Rabb then? When they ask you out for coffee, are you going to see the burhan of your Rabb then? That's when it matters. And you know what we do? We shut off that burhan. I don't want to look at that burhan right now. I want to be someone else. And then later on, I'll turn it back on when I go to the halaqah in the masjid. So the seeing Allah for who He is and how Allah plays a role in my life, let me put that in certain times. Jummah prayer. Let me put that in Ramadan. Let me put that in certain situations, right? Around the prayer times or around Hajj or whatever. And other times, let me just see things the way I want to see them. Why do you have to bring religion into everything? Why do you have to see everything so Islamically? That's way too Islamic. Salih was it Shu'aib or Salih? I forget which one. I'll look it up again. That when he would preach to them, you say, does your prayer make you stop us from doing this? As-salatuka ta'muruka. Your prayer makes you to just pray. You did your prayer, now live your life. You gave God what He wants. You gave Allah what He wants. You prayed. You put your head on the ground a couple of times. Now live your life. And if you messed up, There's always prayer, right? So you can just do whatever you want and then go pray again. You'll feel better about yourself. Because now prayer isn't about Allah or your loyalty to Allah. It's about making you feel better. Because we're in a consumer society, so even religion becomes a consumer product. The deen is just there to make me feel better. So when prayer makes me feel better, I'll pray. And when other things make me feel better, where I have to shut off the burhan of my Rabb, I'll shut it off. I'll blind myself to it. لَوْلَا أَرَّأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ, then therefore means no one is immune. Even a prophet of Allah has to see the burhan for himself at that time. And the remarkable thing in this ayah, I was mentioning to Shaykh Suhaib also, is that it's attributed to Yusuf himself. Allah didn't say, he would have desired her too, had we not shown him the evidence of his master. No, had he not seen. So who did the act of seeing? Who opened the eyes themselves? He himself. Until you open your eyes, Allah won't protect you. You can't expect Allah to come and save you from a situation if you don't open your eyes and you don't see the wrong in it yourself. So لَوْلَا أَرَّأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. And this, him seeing things for what they are. This goes back to, وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Again we come back to that ayah. When he was young, Allah says He gave him hukm and ilm. Why did He give him hukm and ilm? Why did He give him good decision making and sound knowledge? Why did He give him those things? Because he does his best in every situation. And what's your best? You worship Allah as though you can see Him. أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. And here, he sees the evidence of his master. Isn't he worshipping Allah as if he can see Him? He's not thinking that I'm alone in the room with this woman. He's thinking, I'm in this room with my Rabb. ما يكون من نجوى ثلاثة إلا هو رابعهم ولا خمسة إلا هو سادسهم ولا أكثر من ذلك ولا أكبر من ذلك إلا هو معهم أينما كانوا. There's no secret meeting of 3 people except Allah is the 4th, no 5 except Allah is the 6th, no more, no less, except that He's with them, wherever they may be. ثم ينبئهم يوم القيامة. Then He'll tell them in great detail on the day of resurrection what they used to be doing. Because I was in the meeting. I was there. I was in that conversation. I was there. I was in that exchange. Whether that was a virtual exchange, whether that was a physical exchange, whether that was a conversation in person that you guys had in the car, whether it was on the phone, whether it was on FaceTime, He knows. He was there. He was there. Whether it got recorded or not, whether you erased it or not, whether there's a backup file or not, He's got the backup file. He was part of it. So He says here, لَوْلَا أَرَّأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. Now Allah describes something He did for Yusuf alayhi salam. كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ السُّوءَ وَالْفَحْشَاءَ. That is how we turned evil and shamelessness away from him. I'm going to say that again. That is how we turned evil and shamelessness away from him. Allah did not say He turned desire away from him. Desire is something Allah created human beings with. And Allah describes as she's the evil one, he's the righteous one, and yet she has desire for him, and he's also human. He felt it, he prevented himself, but he can feel it too, and he would have felt it too, at the wrong time too. And it also means generally, he's a man, he would have felt desire for her. But Allah is not telling us that that's evil. Allah is telling us that energy that Allah put inside us, that desire that Allah put inside us, like any other appetite, if it is directed in the wrong place, then it's evil. And so He says, and that is how we turned him away. And all of that this scenario, had he not seen the evidence of his master, is how we turned him away from evil and shamelessness. Now, what is evil and shamelessness? Why these 2 things? Why not one thing? The 2 things, because there's lots of commentary about this. I'll share some thoughts with you on it. Su means evil, and shamelessness is one kind of evil. So if you say asu, evil, it includes shamelessness. It can include killing, it can include stealing, it can include lying, it can include cheating, and it can include zina. It can include any of them. All of them are in the end su, like Allah describes as sayyi'at, from the same origin. Sayyi'at, evil deeds, are including shamelessness, yes? But here Allah says, so we could turn him away from evil, which is broad, and then He mentions, and shamelessness, separately. Now this is, in one sense, al-am ala al-khas, which means the broad term And then from within the broad, it's like one of those evils is so powerful, it needs to be mentioned anyway. Especially. Allah does that sometimes He'll say the angels and Jibreel. Sometimes Allah does that. Well, that's odd because Jibreel is also what? An angel. What is He doing? He's saying the angels, and of the angels I have to go out of my way to mention the most remarkable among them, Jibreel. The same way, evil, and I have to go out of my way to mention the most remarkable, powerful evil that will pull you and open the door to all other kinds of evil, which is going to be what? Shamelessness. That's going to be there because it's something Allah put inside the human being. Desire is something Allah put inside the human being. The desire to want to not be alone is something Allah put inside a human being. It's not just sexual, it's also emotional, it's also, a mental. You don't want to be alone, you want to be with someone. You want to have a companion in life. That's something Allah put inside of you. And that feeling can easily turn in the wrong direction and become fahsha. In modern times it becomes the need for attention. I just want to talk to somebody. It can turn into that. He says, we turned him away. كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ السُّوءَ وَالْفَحْشَاءَ. It is because he saw Allah's evidence in the right time. This is the second time Allah is talking about divine intervention. So I want you to understand the formula here for all of us. The first time we learned in ayah number 22, when somebody does their best with whatever little they know, Allah gives them firm decision making. Remember that? And Allah opens the door for knowledge. That was ayah number 22. Here we're learning when someone can see the evidence of their master when they're being called to evil. They're being called to evil, nobody will find out, but somehow the spiritual force field kicked in and they were able to stop themselves. They were able to say, nope, my Rabb doesn't want this. They were able to do that at that moment. Even though there's two forces that are working against that. There's your own desire, there's your own temptation, there's your own humanness, your own weakness, your own needs, and there's another person who's exerting influence on you. Another person is telling you it's okay. Another person is telling you, come on, do this, don't hurt my feelings. Another person is telling you, I'll be very upset if you don't do this. They're putting some kind of emotional pressure on you, psychological pressure. They're playing some kind of game with you. So there's you inside wanting something, and there's someone on the outside wanting something from you. They're both pushing in that direction, and the only thing keeping you from going that way is a burhan of your Rabb pushing this way back. That you could see that your faith, and you say, no, I'm gonna tame myself and go this way, and I'm gonna tame them and go this. I don't care if they get hurt. I don't care if they get upset. I don't care how badly they want what they want. I'm not displeasing my master. This is burhan Rabbi. And if you can do that, then Allah will give you and me what Allah gave Yusuf alayhi salam. What is that? This is so that we can ward him, steer away evil and shamelessness from him. Now what in the world? But there was evil in the room. You could argue, how did Allah steer evil and shamelessness from him? Shamelessness is standing right in front of him, locking the doors. There's evil right there. He's stuck in the evil. What do you mean Allah steered evil away from him? Allah is not talking about the outside. This entire ayah is not about the outside. What's it about? The desire was on the inside. This is how we turned any inclination towards evil away from his heart. This is how we kept his heart from ever pushing or inclining towards shamelessness. This is how we pushed him away from all of it, because he sees the burhan of his Rabb. This is Allah teaching us that when we see the power of our faith when it comes to those kinds of situations, those kind of situations that are so lustful, that are sucking somebody in, that are pulling somebody into the wrong, and you can stop yourself and recognize the burhan of your Rabb, then Allah will put more force fields inside your heart and protect you and take you away from evil thoughts and fahsha. And there's another meaning here too, before I move forward. And the other meaning here, possibly, is that it's not just an act of shamelessness. It's not just an act of shamelessness between, two people. It's not just fahsha. It's actually evil on a much broader scale. It's an act of evil done towards Allah Azza wa Jal. You disregarded Allah. It's an act of evil done to the head of the household. It's an act of evil done to your own soul. There are evil, when you do this kind of evil, people think It's nobody's business. If it's my personal sin, it doesn't affect anybody. If I'm not killing anybody, let me just do what I want, because even if it is bad, it's just bad for me, right? I'm not hurting anyone else. So people assume that when you do something bad, its evil effects are only on yourself. So this is fahsha, it's a personal choice. It's a consensual sin, so no big deal. Allah is calling it su' before He calls it al-fahsha. Meaning, don't forget that that act of evil, that act of shamelessness is in fact evil. And it opens up doors to many other evils. And what does the Prophet ﷺ tell us? إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحْيِ فَافْعَلْ مَا شِئْتَ. When you stop having shame, do whatever you want. And why is that? Because when you stop having shame, then you lose a part of your humanity. And when you lose a part of your humanity, you're no longer ashamed of your master, you're no longer ashamed of Allah Azza wa Jalla, you're no longer ashamed of lying, of cheating, of stealing. When this is gone, all the other moral compasses you have start disappearing. This is like the crutch holding all of it together. Your haya, your chastity, your shame. May Allah Azza wa Jalla help us preserve it for each of ourselves and our children. إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. Allah says, there's no doubt about it, He was from our servants. There's two qira'at of mukhlasin. There's mukhlisin and mukhlasin. I'll explain both. Mukhlisin means He was from our sincere slaves. He was from our sincere slaves. Now, this is also a curious word, and I'll give you the second meaning too, but first let's talk about sincere. Akhlasa, to be sincere. Sincerity means your intentions are only for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And insincerity means that, for example, if I'm praying, but I'm praying to show off, that would be insincere. Or if I'm saying words of kindness, but behind your back, I mean harm for you, then I'm being insincere. So ikhlas is having pure intentions, clean intentions, and what you have on the inside is what is on the outside. And he says about his slave Yusuf alayhi salam, he was from our sincere slaves. But what does sincerity have to do with this scenario? What does him being sincere to Allah have to do with this scenario? Here, what I can understand, Allahu Ta'ala A'lam, is that sincerity here refers to the fact that a person can make all kinds of excuses for themselves at certain occasions, and then later on say, no, I just slipped and I'm making tawbah, even though they made a conscious decision at that time. They can justify to themselves, I wasn't myself and I messed up. Right? Now, it could be you can say, I wasn't myself and I messed up and I slipped, and there is such a thing as slipping and making a mistake and all of that. But until you come to Allah and genuinely say that, Ya Rabb, I made a bad choice, and that wasn't sincere, I lied to myself. I wasn't honest with myself. Mukhlisin also here can be, he's completely honest with himself. And he can see that this is an evil. By the way, later on, he's actually going to tell Allah. He's going to be so open and vulnerable before Allah, it's remarkable. إِلَّمْ تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. I don't know how much more vulnerable you get. Like there's no self-righteousness inside of Yusuf alayhi salam. He's very honest about his weakness. He's honest about his humanness. He knows that he cannot be put in certain situations that are going to compromise his faith. And he will do his best to Ya Allah, just put me in prison instead. That's him being sincere to himself. He's being sincere to himself. The other meaning of the reading of mukhlisin is mukhlasin. Those given sincerity, those made pure. Those made pure. And this is a phrase Allah uses for the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that He especially chose them and made them pure of them. And so it could be a reference to the fact that he was from the chosen children of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So it could be a reference to his prophethood. It can also be that he's from our slaves that have been granted purity, meaning when Allah's slaves demonstrate to him that they can do the right thing even when they are put in such a pressure situation and they cannot forget Allah in those critical moments, then the remarkable gift Allah will give them also is from Himself. He will grant them a special purity. He will purify them. He will make them of those that have been cleansed, who have been made sincere. So that would be the ism maf'ul version of it, mukhlasin, that Allah will give that to His slaves. Meaning, I'm not that good of a person, but since I made a good choice, and Allah saw that I made a good choice, Allah makes me a better person. Put it simply. Allah cleans my heart more than I could have cleaned it myself. Allah removes evils from my heart more than I could have removed them from myself because I showed Allah dedication, because I proved myself at this occasion. Where nobody else was checking, and it was only me and my Rabb, and I showed loyalty to my Rabb. إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. This is such an intricate, personal moment in the life of Yusuf alayhi salam. Think about that. The only people that are going to know about this are people that when they get to the door in the next ayah, and they're going to ask what happened, he said, she said, etc. But what happens inside this room, before we even think about what happens physically inside the room, that they're running to the door and she's tearing his shirt, none of that stuff. Allah, before He gets to that, He told us what was happening inside of their hearts, because that was the most important part. That was actually the most important part. And he would have been no different from her, because human beings have this tendency, except he has his Rabb. لولا أن رأى برهان ربه كذلك لنصرف عنه السوء والفحشاء إنه من عبادنا المخلصين. So Allah Azza wa Jalla protected him by His burhan, and he saw an evil for what it is right away. The other inclination, of course, would have means that he didn't even entertain the thought of desire towards her. And I'm more inclined towards that idea only because he doesn't even use the word you, remember? Like, he's not giving her any attention. This could be he went out of his way to not give her attention because he knew that can become a slippery slope, either for herself, or maybe he's even never going to put himself in a position where I would never slip, because the prophets of Allah are humble before Allah Azza wa Jal. They're asking Allah for forgiveness. They're the biggest examples of extra caution. And by the way, just because somebody's being extra cautious doesn't mean they're weak. Oh, you're so weak, you got to take these extra precautions? What's the matter? Can't handle it? Can't handle low pressure? Oh, well, you're going to be in the same room with a woman, and what, are you going to not be able to control yourself? Is that what it is? You're that weak? You're that perverted? This is the trick of the shaitan nowadays. The thing of shaitan nowadays is if somebody's trying to guard themselves, and people come along and say, we are far more pure than you should be more like us, and you know what? You have a problem because you're trying to guard yourself. You have a problem because you're trying to guard yourself. You're putting measures in place to protect yourself. That means something's wrong with you. Flip the script, basically. Just flip the script. And what's wrong with the thing that's wrong is the frivolousness that's being spread, and the one who says, no, I don't want to do it. I remember there was an American senator, I believe he was, who some reporter wanted to travel with him and interview him, like a traveling journalist. And he said, I don't travel alone with a female, unless my wife is with me. I don't travel alone with a female. And she decides to make a big news report, and blast him and all of this stuff, because he's so afraid, or it's so chauvinistic, or this or that or the other. He's just trying to protect himself, that's all. That doesn't make him an evil person. Actually made a good call, in my opinion. As politically incorrect as that may sound to some people, doesn't matter. Yusuf alayhi salam will take precautionary measures. And I had full intention to talk to you about the scene that's coming today, but this ayah kind of needed time for itself. And the last comments I'll share with you about this ayah is, don't think that these feelings themselves are evil, and don't think that you are so Islamic now that you won't have such feelings. Alhamdulillah, you're married. Alhamdulillah, you've never had alhamdulillah, you're in an Islamic community. You're in an Islamic environment. You're in a good Muslim family. So you would never have such thoughts. No, don't become self-righteous. La tuzakku anfusakum. Don't declare yourselves pure. Don't become lax when it comes to guarding yourselves with this. And finally, innahu min ibadina al-mukhlasin. I'm reminded, shaitan, when he challenged Allah that he will destroy us, you know what he said? I'm going to mislead all of these human beings, these children of Adam, except illa ibadaka minhum al-mukhlasin, except the slaves among your slaves who have been granted sincerity. Same word, al-mukhlasin. You know what that means? That means that what Yusuf alayhi salam did protects him from the waswasa of shaitan. This is a shield against shaitan. Allah will grant you an extra shield against the whispers of shaitan when you can fight that evil in the most pressure situations. He will make you from those where even the devil declared, I will have a hold on a lot of humanity, not those that are made mukhlasin. May Allah make us among those that are mukhlaseen. May Allah make us of those who, if we failed in such tests before, never fail in such tests again. And may Allah Azza wa Jal not put us in situations that are more than we can bear. And may Allah not allow us to put ourselves in compromising situations. And that's really what we're going to talk about tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. How we sometimes put ourselves in fitna and then say, I'm only human. What you want me to do? We're going to discuss that inshallah ta'ala in some detail tomorrow. So tomorrow my intention, by the way, is to go from ayah number 25 all the way to ayah number 27. And I think that all of that can be discussed as one unit inshallah. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.